Chapter 119 The Prince Arrives. Good song, good words. Fan Ruoro smiled and sighed. Miss Sang's singing skills are truly extraordinary. Sangwon was satisfied to be praised by the rather talented Fan's family's eldest miss in Kyoto, and slightly blushed as she made a bow. Winter scenery and spring cold, but it makes this hot summer day a bit more refreshing. Lin Wanner also nodded her head in praise. Fan Xian had been reborn in Qing for 16 years, but he still didn't like listening to tunes much. Instead, he often missed Yang Zhongwei's songs from his previous life. When he thought of Yang Zhongwei, he thought of Yi Zhongwei, who had often come to the fan mansion to pay his respects some days ago, and his brows furrowed. He hated that talented man for no apparent reason. However, Miss Sang Wen's song, Suddenly Meet Onyx Silk Dress, but it stirred some of his thoughts. The white silk dress is white silk sleeves, thin silk underwear, like a white plum, and when he and Wan Er first met before the incense at the Qing temple, Wan Er wore a white dress, like a plum, but the cold plum had more color. It was just that the plum had more of the flavor of a chicken leg. Fan Xian subconsciously looked toward Lin Wan Er, but found that she is also looking at himself. Gaze touch, Fan Xian slightly smile, Lin Wan Er slightly shy. Although Yi Linger had long recognized Fan Xian's ability, but looking at this scene of dark waves, her heart was somehow still a bit uncomfortable, and she coughed twice. I don't really like listening to music. Fan Xian laughed and said, It seems that Miss Yi and I are generally rough people. He admitted to himself that he was just a roughneck, but this remark dragged Yi Linger in, and the two other girls couldn't help but laugh, and even Sangwon, who was originally a bit bewildered, couldn't help but cover her mouth sweetly. At this time in the mountain hall only he is a man, sitting next to his sister and Wan Er, Yi Ling Er sitting next to Wan Er, all is a light girl's breath. This kind of feeling makes Fan Xian feel very good, sighing this life is not false, this trip is not false. As long as it's not County Lord Rugia by his side, Fan Xian thought with some trepidation, a young girl is the most wonderful existence in the world. But if it's a little girl who is always looking at you with the eyes of looking at her husband 10 years from now, that's not good. Just at this moment, Sangwon girl suddenly drummed up the courage to scopolamine obeisance. To Fan Xian said softly, the little girl is presumptuous, want to beg Mr. Fan resignation sentence. Artists in the capital, the fight is a row, but also to fight the level of fans. See, listening to the song is the prince or the duke, but the fight to the end, or to fight a strength, is the lyrics and songs on the kung fu. This Miss Sang was able to be looked into the eyes of both the county princess and the Fan family's eldest lady. Naturally she was a first-class person, and she thought about good music and good words day and night, and today, by chance, she met Mr. Fan, who was famous for his poems in Kyoto, and she couldn't help but be reserved, and despite the big difference in status between the two sides, she bravely put forward this somewhat impudent request. Fan Xian was stunned, but Lin Wanner and her sister beside him were already laughing and letting him right away. Even Yi Linger had her big curious eyes open, wanting to see what kind of sentences he could actually come up with. Fan Xian was so annoyed that he had to go into the inner room, laying down paper and ink, and Fan Ruarua had already tacitly sat down on the bookcase and waited for the pre-writing. It turned out that Fan Xian was actually just a bookboy's role, and the three girls who followed him into the room couldn't help but laugh again at the sight. Sister's writing is going to be better. Fan Xian explained with slight embarrassment. Although he had practiced his writing quite diligently when he was in Tanyu, he still wasn't as beautiful as his sister's writing when he arrived, so he simply gave way. In a short while, Fan Ruarua had memorized the words that Fan Xian had read in silky small caps, and Sangwon was already brightened up when he first heard it, and when he nervously received the piece of paper and read it carefully, he was even more overjoyed, and bowed down towards Fan Xian with a flourish. Sangwon thanks Fan for the gift of the words, and I can't thank you enough for the great favor. Lin Wanner and Fan Ruoro also nodded their heads, thinking that the words written by Fan Xian were worthy of the word great favor. If Sangwon were to compose a good tune and sing the words all over Kyoto, there would be a few more years of good times. Today, Fan Xian copied the wonderful words of Tang Xianzu. The original beautiful purples and brilliant reds bloomed all over the place, like this. All of them were paid off with broken wells and decaying walls. The good time and the beautiful scenery of Nihation, whose yard is the one who enjoys the happiness and pleasures. Toward the fly twilight roll, clouds Chuixian, rain wind peace, smoke wave painting boat, Jinping people to see this Shaoguang cheap. He looked at the women intoxicated look, sighed and shook his head, thinking that the Peony Pavilion is a wonderful article. This single put forward, the beauty is beautiful, no before and after the text of the contrast. Always lacks some essence, just he is now busy with the point of business and love. Even the outing is crowded 2 days, which have time to go to the hole to go. It seems that the dissemination of this advanced culture is indeed very difficult. It seems that this work of spreading advanced culture is indeed very difficult. It's too bad. Has been silent. Yilinger reaction is slightly slow, until this time to taste the true flavor of the sentence, Sadness said. Suddenly, Fan Ruoro's face changed, thinking that the phrase good time and beautiful scenery had already appeared in the Book of Stones, Lin Dayu's wine order. If Sangwon sang this word all over the capital, wouldn't it immediately be known that the stone book was written by her brother? But as she looked at Fan Xian, who seemed to have forgotten about this matter, and deep in her heart she thought of her brother fighting for great fame again, she couldn't help but smile slightly and cover this up without mentioning it. The outing ended successfully, and everyone got what they wanted before they came. Yilinger got some small means, Sangwon got Fan Xian's words, Fan Xizhi got a bellyful of grilled fish and meat, Brother Debao finally pulled a horseback to the Xiangfu, Fan Ruoruo got 2 days of elegant scenery to clear her mind. Lin Waner got the opportunity to get close to her elder brother, Fan Xian got the most, but he couldn't say it. If it ended like this, all would be happy. But when Fan Xian heard Wang Qinyan's report, he frowned. He really didn't expect things to come together like this. The Crown Prince was coming. Retreat. Hearing that the Crown Prince was coming to the Summer Palace today, Fan Xian, without saying a word, instructed Wang Qinyan to arrange for his large group to retreat back to the capital. Just kidding, the Crown Prince of a country is coming to the summer resort. Does he still dare to compete with him for the land? What's more, his own Fan family has always been categorized in the Second Prince faction. The Prime Minister and the East Palace break. The supervisory Yuan did hold His Majesty's thighs, Fan Xian behind the power, but all the prince's most hated target. If the two parties really met each other, even if Fan Xian had a fake princess by his side, plus the misses of the Yi Fan family, if the Crown Prince really wanted to humiliate himself, he would have no place to look for someone to reason with. His Majesty the Emperor said at the Green Bamboo Tea House on the banks of the Lujing River that little Fan Xian should be able to live comfortably in the capital. But His Highness the Crown Prince probably disliked the idea of little Fan Xian being comfortable, and if there was a difference of opinion between father and son, Fan Xian didn't have the arrogance to think that the Emperor would go out and deal with his own son for the sake of the son of a mere minister. So he would withdraw cleanly and sharply, not giving the Crown Prince the chance to see himself, not giving the Crown Prince the chance to humiliate himself, and at the same time, to not give himself the chance to be humiliated, in case he couldn't help but beat the Crown Prince up and commit a crime against heaven. Coming in style, but withdrawing in fear, Fan Xian's heart wasn't savory either. And Lin Waner even frowned a little unhappy, thinking that Brother Cheng Qian is not a tiger. How come her husband would be afraid like this? Yilinger also looked down on Fan Xian, who was afraid of the rich and powerful, thinking, so what if he's a prince? When he was a child, when His Majesty sent him to the Yi family to practice martial arts, he himself had beaten him up. After all, Fan Xian is only an 8-piece concordance, the bastard son of the district Sinan Bo, whereas these two girls have been in and out of the palace since childhood, and are used to seeing the top characters in the world. And his thinking is always much more mature than these girls. Know that this matter is somewhat sensitive. Because of his quick arrangement, when the Crown Prince's team was about to arrive at the Summer Palace, Fan Xian's team was already on the official road, and the two sides brushed past each other. At this moment, a gong sounded, just like a theater, to start singing. The prince's caravan stopped, and some guards made Fan Xian's side stop as well. Fan Xian lifted the curtain and looked over with an expressionless face, only to see that on top of the bright yellow carriage, the Crown Prince of his country, the 18-year-old man with the greatest power in the whole world in the future, was breathlessly saying something to the carriage behind him. Crown Prince Li Chengqian, his features are quite handsome, but he doesn't feel very good. His face is a little white, and the corners of his lips are slightly black. He came to the summer resort today to spend the summer, did not think that the road actually saw Warner sister and the girl of the Yi family are growing up together as a child partner, so stopped to chat a few words. Knowing that Wan Air sisters spent the night in the summer resort yesterday, Li Chengqian said with heartache, "You also do not cherish your body," the imperial physician said. "Your disease is most afraid of wind and cold." Yi Linger smiled at the side and clipped in, "Sister Lin is not worried about this. Nowadays the side is followed by a famous doctor." Lin Warner frowned at Yi Linger and explained with a smile, "It's already summer, where would I catch any wind chill?" But did not turn the conversation over. The Crown Prince was curious about Yi Linger's words, asked in detail, only to know that the carriage in front of the future son-in-law sitting inside is actually Warner's sister. Greatly surprised, said, "Is the Fan family that fights black boxing? Recently, it is a famous character. Hurry up and let him come over to let the palace take a look." "Forget it, Your Highness, don't scare him," Lin Wan Air said with some difficulty. The Crown Prince frowned and said, "There are a few poor relatives in the Prince of Heaven's family, and in the future, after you guys get married, he will be considered my brother-in-law, so what is there to be afraid of if you meet him? Besides, in a few days father will always call him into the palace to pay respects to those ladies in the palace." He paused, and then said, "And immediately the court has a job to give him to do. Does he still want to hide and not see people?" These words were then said extremely heavily, and the two teams of horsemen were instantly quiet. "Greetings, Your Highness the Crown Prince." A voice broke the calm, and Fan Xian had arrived before the Crown Prince's carriage at some point, smilingly bowing.